Howdy, everybody. Trying a couple new things here today that didn't work, so let's go right back into the status quo. So, you may or may not know that we got a really important inflation reading that came out last Thursday, and inflation was down a tick. So, everyone started freaking out and losing their mind and buying things and buying things and okay, let's put this into a little bit of context here. So let's go back to the last great inflation that we had. We're looking at the 1960s, 70s, and 80s on this chart today. In the red, we have the uh, inflation rate, and in the orange, we have the Fed funds rate. So coming into this great inflation, in the early 60s, we had inflation rates that were hovering right around 1.3% and a Fed funds rate that was similarly low, 1 3/4 back in 61. But things started creeping up as the decade progressed, and we got over here, 1966. Things were both moving up, the inflation and the Fed funds rate to try to control it. As you can see, the Fed funds rate in orange was above the rate of inflation to try to push it down. So the the relief was temporary, and once we got over to 1970, um, well, actually, the December of 69 is the relational peak of this area where inflation came up around 6.2%, lower than we have now, but the federal funds rate went all the way up here to 9%, a full 50% again higher than the rate of inflation to try to tamp the inflation down. And as you can see in the subsequent months, it did actually work temporarily. And we got inflation all the way back down to a much more manageable level, right there at 2.9% by the time 1972 was in full swing. Unfortunately, the inflation did not go away forever, though, and it came back with a vengeance. By the time 1974 rolled around, it was all the way up to 12%. It came in almost double what was the inflation of last time. So they didn't solve the problem right away. It came back twice as bad next time. This is what we're in danger of doing right now. We're not solving the problem. We're not getting serious about these Fed funds rates, and it could come back twice as bad next time. As you can see, they did attempt to fight the problem with a higher Fed funds rate all the way up to 13%. And that was enough to have some temporary relief, the Fed funds rate and the inflation rate both going down, commingled here simultaneously. But since they only left the Fed funds rate up for 1 month, they didn't go higher for longer. It came back, and this is when it starts getting really eye-popping. 1980 is when the inflation topped out 14.8%, the highest at that point in many decades. And now again, here we are in the same conversation that we're looking at a Fed funds rate, and that's not nearly controlling our inflation. Here they had to push up the Fed funds rate all the way up to its highest level here at right around 19%. 19% over an inflation that's sitting at 15. So as you can see, every time inflation comes up, they put the Fed funds rate above inflation and tamp it down. And then the inflation comes up higher, the funds rate has to go even higher to tamp it down. And then it goes so high, it goes off the top of the chart, and that's where you require the Fed funds rate. It's ultimately at that insanely high 20%. And whew, imagine trying to buy a mortgage then. Imagine trying to buy a car. Imagine trying to do anything where you need to finance it, where you are not only paying the sticker price, you're paying 20% per year. How could anybody live like that? So this is where we're heading to, and I just wanted to go over the interlude period as well. So here we are, got the inflation rate ticked down just one tiny little iota from the 9.1 down to the 7.7. Everyone's acting like this is a done deal. Everyone's acting like it's time to spike the football. But look at the Fed funds rate here, sitting at 3%, a measly 3%. How are you going to tamp down that inflation if you never even get the Fed funds rate up above high enough? This is just a temporary reprieve for inflation, and it's not being caused in any significant way from the Fed's funds rate. This reduction in inflation is supply side. This is economies creating and producing lots and lots of inventory, and you get a glut of supply. When you get a glut of supply, then that's going to cause all the prices to come down. But that's only temporary, because this inflation is a monetary side inflation as well. So when you get trillions and trillions of dollars out there chasing the same amount of goods, it doesn't matter what happens with your supply. It matters what happens with your monetary policy. And right now, they're not even trying to tighten the monetary policy. Quantitative tightening has just barely even started one little iota. Right here, we're not even halfway to where the inflation rate is. The 3%, that's not even half of 7.7. So how is this doing anything whatsoever on the monetary side to tamp down inflation? It's not. It's not. And we might see a temporary reprieve. We might see maybe a couple months, maybe a year of reductions. But if we do not get serious, if we do not actually set this inflation rate and this Fed funds rate appropriately to actually tamp it down and tamp it down for good, we're going to get twice as worse next time. We're going to come out here in 2023 and 2024, maybe even 2025. We're going to be getting prints double digits easily. The Fed has to act now. The Fed has to ignore all these stupid pundits that don't know what they're talking about. They need to look at this data. All right, let's go in interlude period. So we got we already talked about 81. It came back again here in 1984. 1984, the inflation rate was ticking up just a little bit, 4.2%. Federal funds rate, bam, double digits again, 11%, more than double to tamp it down. Here we go again, 89, even lower this time on inflation, 5%. 5%. We're higher than 5%. We're higher than 5% on core. Fed funds rate, 9.8%. 3 times as much as we're doing now. What are we doing? Oh my gosh, this is so ridiculous. Let's go to 2000. Inflation rate, 3.7. Less than half of what we got now. Fed funds rate, 6.5. It's like they reversed. Are these guys even paying attention whatsoever? Here we go again. 2007. Very famous example. Inflation rate was, not really that high. Pretty manageable here, 4.3. A little bit higher than the 2% long run average. So bumped up the Fed funds rate, 5%. Above the rate of inflation every single time. Even in 2018, back here in 2018, when we can only manage a Fed funds rate of 2.4%, it still was actually above the rate of inflation, which was 1.6. Every single time, going all the way back to the 1960s, every single time we got inflation, we moved the Fed funds rate above the inflation. We need to bring it down, and the only way we can do it is tamp it down. Oh gosh, these guys are they're going to put us in this economy for decades to come. We're going to be working on this. We're going to be paying for this. Back in the 60s, the episode started, from 1965, when things were pretty much situation normal. They finally got it back for the first time underneath the 2% target by 1986. 20 years. At least 20 years. And then, as you can see, as it keeps on flaring up and flaring up and flaring up, we're going to be dealing with this inflation for 20 to maybe even 40 years if we don't act now, and they have not been doing nearly enough. Not nearly enough. 3% is pathetic. Quantitative tightening, just a tiny little bit of quantitative tightening, it's pathetic. You got Jeremy Siegel coming on the air. He doesn't know what he's talking about, honestly. He talks right out of his butt. He doesn't show any of his work. He just trust me. I'm a professor. Well, guess what, Professor Siegel? You don't know what you're talking about. You don't show your work. I give you a grade of an F. And that's what we're talking about today, inflation. Subscribe. Have a great day.